Good morning, Rabbi Rabotai. We're continuing on Masechet Avodah Zarah. We're on Daf Tet, Amud Aleph, 5 lines down from the wide lines. We are amidst making some calculations of the historical facts of when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed versus the governing authorities of Yavan and Rome, which really, Rome, as we mentioned, as we will see this in this today's Amud as well, the Rome was really a continuation of Malchut Yavan, and hence they still counted the years of Malchut Rome, so to speak, from the beginning of Malchut Yavan, because that was really the continuity of Malchut Yavan. Now the Gemara mentioned that if you want to figure out the years of the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, how do you do it? If you remember the hundreds, but you don't remember the tens and the singles, then it's easy. You could check with the sofer. Sofer doesn't mean sofer of Sefer Torah. It means somebody that writes shtarot for the goyim, which even the Jews wrote the shtarot, their documents, mentioning how many years from Malchut Yavan it was. But not really from Malchut Yavan, from the beginning of Alexander the Great, but 6 years after, because the first 6 years that they took throne was only over the country of Elam. It was not like a world power, was not considered an empire yet, so he started from when they actually became an empire, which was 6 years in. So we did the cheshbon, actually, if you take a look at the destruction of Beit HaMikdash and work backwards, 103 last years was the Malchut of Hordus, and then before that was 103 years of Hashmonaim. Prior to that was 180 years of Malchut Yavan. But that is -6, because the first 6 years was not, but it's good that you have 6 years over there, because 3 and 3. So you do the cheshbon, will be 380 years prior to Churban is when the Sofer writes, starting Malchut Yavan. So if you want to get to the hundreds, round it up, the closest 100 would be 400. So that's 20 years additional. So if you're a Tana, you add 20 years to what the Sofer is writing in the Shtarot, and then you know it. You know the tens and the singles. The hundreds, of course, you know already, right? So therefore, if you want to know how many years after the Churban you are, you just have to add 380 years to what the Sofer is counting. Or if you want to just do a cheat sheet, then you could ask them, if you know already it's 100 and some years, right? You just want to know the tens and the singles, then you add 20 years to the tens and singles of the Sofer, and you have then the round number of what you need to go, right? So therefore, if it's, let's say, 550 years after the Malchut of Yavan, if the Sofer is writing 550, you could just minus that by 380 and you'll get 170. Or you could do what? 550, add 20 to the 50 and you'll be 70. You know already it's 100 and something. You add 20 to the 50 and you'll have 70. So that's just the formula of Chishi. Now we're going to have another 2 of these in today's Amud, but first a fascinating piece of Agata, which all of you know without having learned this Gemara. And it all starts from this Gemara. Well, the identical Gemara to this also is found in Masechet Sanhedrin of Tzadi Zayin, that the world is going to stand 6,000 years, right? 6,000 years, where does that come from? It comes from Avodah Zarah Daf Tet, Sanhedrin Daf Tzadi Zayin. Says the Gemara, Tana de Eliyahu. This is for Rabbi Eliyahu Navi. Sheshed alafim shana heve haolam. The world will be 6,000 years. And this 6,000 years are going to be divided to 3 different divisions. 2,000 years, 2,000 years, and 2,000 years. The first 2,000 is tohu, emptiness, which is emptiness because it was before the Torah was given. Shnei alafim Torah, then the second group of 2,000 years, that means from year 2000 to year 4000, is going to be the years of development of Torah. And Shnei alafim yemot HaMashiach. And the last 2,000 years is going to be the days of Mashiach, which started really a while back. And the Gemara says that be'avonotenu sherabu, because of our avonot, yatz'u mehen, mashe yatz'u mehen. Already we have lost a bunch of years of that, and this is when the Gemara was writing it. We are counting many more decades, and it's still, unfortunately, be'avonotenu sherabu yatz'u mehen, mashe yatz'u mehen, very appropriate, time appropriate. Chodesh Av speaking about this, and says the Gemara, that would be still Yemot HaMashiach. Now the Gemara asks the obvious question: Shnei Alafim Torah me'emat. Where does the Shnei Alafim start? Right? When does the Shnei Alafim start? When does the Shnei Alafim start? I would say Shnei Alafim should start from Torah. The 2,000 years of Torah should start when? Well, Matan Torah, right? But that doesn't work. The Gemara says, Inema mi Matan Torah. If we say what we would say, what anyone would say, that starts from Matan Torah, then Adhashta leka kulehai. We don't have that many years from Matan Torah until the writing of the Gemara is not yet 2,000 years. But really, the easier, better way of saying it would be that Matan Torah was in what year from creation? Does anyone know? Something you gotta know. 2448. 448 years later than the 2,000 years of Tohu. In other words, if you're telling me that the first 2,000 years of the world is supposed to be Tohu, and then the Torah is going to start, so then it should start from year 2000, not 2,448. So says the Gemara, it can't be from Matan Torah, which is very interesting. The 2,000 years of Torah starts from before Matan Torah, which is a fascinating thing. We're going to just speak about it in a moment. Says the Gemara, because when you take a look at them, Tre alafi prati dehai alfahu dehavai. Says there are some change years, which is some change, it's not just 5 years, it's 448 years change that you have additional to that. You know when it started? It started when somebody started making Torah available to the people. So the Torah was given to the world, which is fascinating, by the way. It means it's referring to Avraham Avinu and Sarah pastoralizing the Torah, making it available, campaigning for Torah all over the world, going from place to place by Eshel, Avraham Avinu taking the Torah out to the people, which is a fascinating thing. By the way, if you would want to spend just a moment on this, this is a question that Maran Bet Yosef asks in Kesef Mishneh. Chatam Sofer asks the same question in his Haktama to his Tshuvot in Yoredah. He has a kuntras, he has a pamphlet called Pituchei Chotam. He asks the same question. Say, wait a second, Avraham Avinu wasn't the first person that learned Torah. Everyone says that Avraham Avinu was the first one who believed in Hashem. Wrong. Avraham Avinu sent his kids to yeshiva. There was Adam HaRishon that learned Torah, right? Chazal tell us. Then there was Noach that learned Torah. Avraham Avinu had yeshivot of Shem ve'ever. There weren't just people who believed in Hashem, but there were people who taught Torah. That yeshiva of Shem, yeshiva of Ever. Where do you think Yaakov Avinu learned Torah? Not by Avraham Avinu. And Chatam Sofer actually says these people were bigger than Avraham in Torah and in Nevuah. Says Chatam Sofer, when Rivka, the daughter-in-law of Avraham Avinu, has a question to ask, who does she go to? She doesn't go to the Saba, doesn't go to the Tate. She goes to Shem ve'ever to ask a shayla, because they were bigger than Avraham, says the Chatam Sofer. So why is it that Avraham became such a big deal and nobody else became a big deal? So says Maram Bet Yosef, says the Chatam Sofer, because those people taught the Torah to whoever came to them. But Avraham Avinu made it his business to teach Torah to whom he came to. he made it his business to go and spread the Torah. So that was, in some senses, the Gemara over here considered Matan Torah before the actual Matan Torah. Even though that you had the Torah for 100 years before that, but the Torah was kind of like concealed in a Bet Midrash. If you want to learn, go Chazaku Baruch, go learn. But Avraham Avinu kind of like brought the Torah out to the people. That was considered a miniature Matan Torah. So when we talk about Shnei Alafim of Torah, 2,000 years from the giving of the Torah, we're speaking about Avraham Avinu giving the Torah to the people before even Moshe Rabbeinu. So that's the Nefesh Asher Asu Bechar. Now let's do some mathematics over here. When did they start doing this? The Gemiri, we know that Avraham Avinu was 52 years when he was doing his holy work of teaching Torah to people, right? Bar Chamishin v'Tarten Havai. Avraham Avinu was 52 years. Kama Batzran Midetani Tana. So how many years do we have missing from the Cheshbon of 2,000 years? We just mentioned before that the Torah was given on year 2,448. So therefore we are missing 448 years, right? That prior to Matan Torah, already the 2,000 years of Torah started. And says the Gemara, Ki me'ainat ba, when you pay attention and do the back of envelope arithmetics, you will find that mehanefesh asher asu beharan, from that time that Avraham Avinu started teaching ad Matan Torah, until Matan Torah was exactly 440 v'tmania. It was exactly 448 years. So therefore, the 2,000 years of the Torah actually did start on year 2000 of the creation, as the Braita says over here and in Sanhedrin Tzadi Zayin. But it didn't start with Hashem giving the Torah on Har Sinai. It started with Hashem giving the Torah to people, one person at a time, through Avraham Avinu. Great. So says the Gemara now, let's do another formulation. Now, what we have so far is the 448, that is from then until Matan Torah, until Yetziat Mitzrayim, right? Matan Torah, Yetziat Mitzrayim is in the same year. So from Avraham Avinu, which is the 2,000 years of Torah, until Matan Torah / Yetziat Mitzrayim, was 448 years. So says the Gemara, now let's do another thing. We just mentioned that the 2,000 years, the last 2,000 years of the world, is Yemot HaMashiach. So if you want to know when Yemot HaMashiach start, a person is supposed to be waiting for Mashiach every day. Right? It's a very interesting Rambam, actually, a very peculiar Rambam. Rambam writes that the person, of course, Rambam counts this as one of the 13 principles of faith that you have to believe in, that Mashiach is going to come. This is Rambam in Pirusha Mishnayot in the 11th chapter of Perek Chelik of Masechet Sanhedrin, and he counts all the 13 principles, and he writes that a person that does not believe in any of them, he loses his Chelik Le'olam Haba. So the concept of Mashiach is very important. But Rambam writes something fascinating. He writes, "V'kol mi she'eno ma'amin bo," anybody that does not believe in Mashiach, or eno mechake biato, he is not awaiting the coming of Mashiach, which means to me that he does believe in him, but he's just not waiting for him. Let it register in your minds. You believe in Mashiach. You say, well, at some point he's going to come, but I have no hosts, I have no patience to wait for him. He'll come when he'll come. Right? Says the Rambam, you are a kofer to the entirety of Torah. Not only he's kofer, he's denying the Torah of Moshe Rabbeinu, but he's denying the entirety of Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, everything we have. It's a pretty strong language for Rambam, who never uses strong languages, right? And he's very meticulous and particular about his language. So how in the world are you kofer is a very good question, but he's talking about a person that does not await the coming of the Mashiach. Now you wonder why the Gemara is going to calculate years from when Yemot HaMashiach started. Well, for the beginners, especially, it's a very time appropriate. They're approaching Tisha B'Av. We wait for Mashiach. We can't wait for him to come. This is something big that our nation lives with this notion of Mashiach on constant basis, not in a premature way of saying we want Mashiach now and sing it around and dance it, but in a real quest and waiting of the coming of Mashiach, for waiting for the manifestations of the presence of Shekhinah in our life is a mature and serious topic in our life. Again, we have to deal with why Rambam calls a person a denier when you believe in Mashiach but you're not waiting for him. But that's for a shiur afterwards. Be'ezrat Hashem. The Gemara says, imagine if you want to easily calculate the years that have passed from Yemot HaMashiach, right? From when it was supposed to be Yemot HaMashiach, which means 4,000 years into the creation. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Papa, 2 lines up. If you want to know how many pratim of the years are of Yemot HaMashiach, that means the hundreds, the thousands by now, or unfortunately, and the hundreds, but you don't know exactly how many years of Yemot HaMashiach we are holding in. So you could also ask the Sofer, you could also ask the scribe that is writing documents for the government, documents for people, counting from, of course, the beginning of the Malchut Yavan, 6 years in. V'nitfi alayhu arba'in v'tamni, and you should add to them arba'in v'tamni, 48 years. And you will find your cheshbon. Why is that? The reason is pretty simple. Because the difference, the Yemot HaMashiach starts 552 years after the Yevanim started their government. So whatever the Sofer is starting, you could add this much to it, right? And that it would add the amount of the years that you are different from Yemot HaMashiach, then Sofer is 552 years. So if you want a cheshbon, you count how much they are and you'll get Yemot HaMashiach. So how does that work exactly? We said that Churban and the Sofer is 380 years, right? So this is really 380 plus 172. How does that work, 172? Because it's very easy, because if you cheshbon when the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, right, and then subtract that from the 2,000 years, you'll get the year of Yemot HaMashiach, right? You want to cheshbon that from the 2,000 of the Torah. Let's go through the back of envelope arithmetics of the 2,000 breakdown. So we just mentioned that the 2,000 years of Torah started from whom? Avraham Avinu, et hanefesh asher asu becharan, right? So once you know that, you know the whole thing. It's very easy, because from Avraham Avinu until Matan Torah / Yetziat Mitzrayim was how many years? 448, right? Then from Yetziat Mitzrayim until Shlomo HaMelech built the Beit HaMikdash, right? It was 480 years that they did not have the Torah, the Beit HaMikdash rather. It took 480 years for them to, with the Mishkan and going around, until David HaMelech prepared the platform and Shlomo HaMelech built the Beit HaMikdash. Beit HaMikdash HaRishon stood 410 years, right? And then it was destroyed for 70 years. And then Beit Sheni was built and stood for 420. So if you add all of these together, it should come out to, for the math geniuses, 1,828 years, right? Now that is by the year that Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. So the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed 1,828 years after the years of Torah started, the 2,000 years. But you still have how much more? So if you have 2,000 minus 1828, you'll get 172. So that means there's 172 years additional years of Torah that you have after Esav already destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, right? Rome, Esav destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. I heard a beautiful insight. One of my friends said, he said, that's the pshat. It says Yaakov came out, ve'yado ochezet be'akev Esav. He was holding the akev, the heel of Esav. So he said, akev is Gimatria 172. Right? So he took away, snatched away 172 years into the Malchut of Esav for years of Torah. But be that as it may, you have 172 after the Churban, 380 years before the Churban. So these two is Malchut of Esav. So whenever you start the Malchut of Yavan, the beginning of the Greek calendar is always 552 years prior to Yemot HaMashiach. So Yemot HaMashiach started 552 years after the calendar years of Rome/Yavan. Now that's easy, because if you want to get a cheat sheet, if you want to figure out the pratim of the years, the tens and the singles, so it's easy. Round this up to the closest 100, which would be 600, right? 600 minus 552, right, would be 48. So whenever you add 48 years, you get to the round number, and then you'll know that, assuming that you know your hundreds already or thousands, if you want to know the difference in singles and tens, it will be 48. That means every time that the Sofer tells you this is the number we are counting from the Roman/Yavan Greek government, you add 48 years to that, and you'll have the years of what? Yemot HaMashiach. That means 48 years after Malchut Yavan, it would be, let's give an example for it. If you have 1,000 years passed from, if the Romans are counting the year 1,000, right? And you want to know how many years into Yemot HaMashiach you are, right? So how many years you are? We mentioned already, you add how many years? Right? It's 552, right? This is before Yemot HaMashiach, that Malchut Yavan started, because they were prior to Yemot HaMashiach, 552 years started their calendars. And if they are counting year 1,000, you have to do 1,000 what? 1,552. Yes or not? Anybody with me? Yeah. Do I have anyone here? Right? It's simple, Rabotai. If you have the years of Malchut Yavan, Malchut Yavan started 380 years prior to the Churban Beit HaMikdash. Yemot HaMashiach started 172 years after Churban. So it's 552 years after the calendar of Yavan that the time of Mashiach has arrived, right? Officially. We lost a lot of those years already. But 550 official time of year 4,000, right? So if you want to know how many years has passed from Yemot HaMashiach, all you have to do is ask the Tana, ask the Sofer rather, how many years are you counting from the Rome, right? And if they're counting, let's say 1,552 years, right? If they're counting that means it's 1,000 years after Churban Habayit, right?
Yes.
So how do you do that?
You just subtract. What's all?
Because it's much easier that way. You're getting confused because I'm showing to you the formula. But once you have a cheat sheet, you say how many years it is, right? And it tells you, say a number, whatever number it is. Let's say in that case, if it's 1,552, I'll just add
48.
Right, 48, and I get 0, 0. So I'll know already that it's going to be 1,000 years after. Right? It takes 2 seconds instead of having to, go through a subtraction of 552. It's much easier when you know the cheat formula, right? And again, this happens a lot. For instance, right now, I mentioned, right now is 2023, and the years of Hebrew is also 3 at the end, right? It's 83. It's 5,783. But it's easy if you forget which one it is. You just know 3. So is it Pei Gimel? Is it Pei Dalet? It's Pei Gimel, right? It's just the same thing with them. To have a quick thought, you say, okay, add 48 years and you have the number. That's much easier than sit and figure out how many years and have to remember 552. Is it easier to remember 552, which is 3 digits, or is it easier to remember just 48? It's much easier that way. And even that, the Gemara is going to give you a siman for it. The Gemara says, and your siman is going to be 48 ir. The pasuk says there are 48 cities of Leviim. So you'll remember cities of Leviim and you're good to go. Right? Yemot Mashiach, Leviim, Area Leviim, and you add that to the Roman thing and you have it. Veitai Safra, and it goes both ways. If the scribe has a question, so of course he'll ask the Chacham, the rabbi, says how many years from Yemot Mashiach, and whatever he says, you minus 48 and you have it. Right? ונבשר מנהו 48 ומשכח לחומרה וסימנך ספרא בסירא תנא תוספא. And the same siman as yesterday, as last year, that the sofer always subtracts and the Tana always adds the number. So that's one other piece of mathematics over here. The next piece is going to be really a fascinating piece of Cheshboning. Let me give like a little preface about what happens in the next piece of the Gemara. We all deal with Shemitah because we have Shemitat Ksafim. Now, Shemitah is not a simple thing because is Shemitah Deoraita, Shemitat Karkaot is a whole big deal every 7 years that you support the farmers in Eretz Yisrael. Is that even Deoraita or is the Rabbanan? Machloket Tanaim, right? Whether or not it's going to be, and also Machloket Rishonim, if it's going to be the Rabbanan, it's a 3-way Machloket Rishonim in Sanhedrin and in other Masechtot. And this Gemara over here is going to deal with Shemitat Ksafim and how to cheshbon the years of Shemitah. And why is it that every Yom Kippur you blow shofar? You only should blow shofar on Yom Kippur, at the end of Yom Kippur, on where? On Yovel. Why do you do it every year? The reason is because Machloket Tanaim, how to calculate the years of Yovel. Is it every 49 years? Is it every 50 years? And every cycle of Yovel, you'll be missing one. So therefore, it becomes a very confusing thing. But the crux of how to calculate the Shemitah and the Yovel and the applications of what is the Oraita, what is the Rabbanan nowadays, or is it at all applicable, is something that Be'ezrat Hashem will continue to discuss tomorrow morning. Chazak u'Baruch.